At Abigail's mother-in-law's birthday dinner in Rome, her seat was absent. Nelson giggled. "Oops, guess we miscounted." When the family laughed, Abigail calmly said, "Seems I'm not family," and walked out. 30 minutes later, they discovered she'd carnaled. The entire event site catering everything, their faces turned ghostly white. "Seems I'm not family," she stated again, her voice firm, despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. The words hung in the air of that fancy Roman restaurant as 12 pairs, several eyes peered back at her, their faces ranging from alarm to poorly hidden satisfaction. Nelson's light giggle as he had remarked, "Oops, guess we miscounted," still lingered in her ears as she turned and went away from the table where there was no chair for her. The shame blazed through her veins as she exited the restaurant, but not a single tear dropped instead. She felt a weird calm take over as she pulled out her phone and launched the event management app. She had built her career on she had 30 minutes before they discovered what she was doing, and that was more than enough time. Abigail Morgan Caldwell, 5 years ago, she was merely Abigail Morgan, the creator of Elite Affairs, Boston's most sought-after event organizing company. She had built her business from the ground up. After putting herself through business school, every gorgeous gala, every perfectly polished company function, every society wedding in Boston had her invisible fingerprints all over it. Her reputation for discretion, attention to expertise, and the capacity to pull off the improbable had made her the go-to planner for the city's elite. That Washoe, she met Nelson Caldwell at a charity banquet she had prepared for the Boston Children's Hospital, tall with wonderfully co-ed brown hair, with a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Nelson had the comfortable assurance of someone who'd never bothered about money. He was attractive in that trained way of guys born into affluence, but there was something genuine in his curiosity in her work. "So you're the wizard behind all this?" he had questioned, indicating to their-modeled ballroom of the Four Seasons. "My mother has been trying to determine out who to hire for her charity function. Next month, I think I just found her answer. One job lead to another, and soon Abigail was routinely preparing gatherings for the Caldwell family. The Caldwells were Boston. Aristocracy with old money, it linked back to shipping and railroads. They had that special kind of affluence that didn't need to show off. It was clear in the subtle quality of everything they owned and the comfort with which they traversed their environment. Her affair with Nelson began 6 months after she started working for his family. He pursued her with the same persistence. He brought to his employment at the family's financial firm. There were warning signals. Of course, the way his mother, Lucy, viewed her with scarcely hidden distaste when Nelson originally introduced her as more than simply an event planner. The casual comments regarding her lowly beginnings, the surprise in people's voices when they discovered she was dating a Caldwell. "You've done well for yourself," Lucy had stated during their first supper together as a couple, her grin not reaching her. Self-made success is so American. Abigail ignored these indications since she was falling in love with Nelson. Seemed different from his family. More open-minded, less worried about lineage and status. When he proposed 11 months after their first date, she said yes, despite the nagging knowledge that she was entering a world that would never completely welcome her. The wedding was naturally the social event of the season. Abigail organized much of it herself, afraid to trust another planner with her own wedding. Lucy had ideas about everything. The venue wasn't traditional enough. The cuisine was too daring. The guest list was lacking crucial society figures. Abigail compromised where she could and held fast where it mattered. Nelson played mediator, but she saw he rarely contradicted his mother right after the wedding. The undermining became more systematic. Despite employing her firm for their events, the Caldwells continuously questioned her judgments, modified plans at the last minute, and took credit for her ideas at family gatherings. Her opinions were requested later, discarded her history in event. Planning was treated as a pleasant pastime rather than a successful business. Abigail has such a wonderful eye for these things, Lucy would say to her pals, caressing Abigail's hand condescendingly. It's almost like having a personal party planner. In the family, Nelson never defended her. He would shrug and tell her later, "That's just how my mother is. You shouldn't take it personally." But it was personal, and it became worse as the years. Having the opportunity to design Lucy's 70th birthday in Rome should have been Abigail's biggest achievement, a week-long celebration in the Eternal City, concluding in a meal at a Michelin-starred restaurant overlooking the Colosseum. She put herself into arranging the perfect event, using every relationship she had in the industry. It was during this preparation that she found the first fractures in the Caldwell facade. The deposits for venues were delayed. Merchants called, inquiring about payments when she reported it to Nelson. He brushed it off, saying the family accountant was just being cautious with overseas payments, but she spotted the statements mistakenly left open on his laptop. Investments gone wrong. Homes mortgaged to the hilt, lines of credit maxed out. The Caldwell money was shrinking rapidly still. She kept planning using her own company's credit line to acquire deposits when needed. She convinced herself it was temporary, that Nelson would explain everything after the birthday celebration was behind them. Then came the morning of their departure to Rome. Nelson was in the bathroom when his phone pinged with a message. Abigail never checked his phone. She had always respected his privacy. Yet something made her look that morning. The message preview from V was apparent on his screen. "Can't wait to meet you in Rome. Have you told her yet?" Her fingers moved without conscious thought, opening the message. Connection with Vicky Hughes, Nelson's college lover, the lady. His parents had always cherished the woman they had, expecting him to marry before he met Abigail. The texts went back months. Plans formed, a future discussed, and yes, a baby. Their kid expected in 4 months. Abigail grabbed screenshots, forwarded them to herself, then removed the proof from his phone. She packed her luggage, plastered in a smile, and boarded the aircraft to Rome with her spouse and his family. Currently stood outside that restaurant in Rome. Had made her choice. She wouldn't approach Nelson before the dinner. She would let circumstances unfold, and when they did, she would be ready. Their aircraft landed at Facco Airport. Just as the golden Italian sunset illuminated Rome's horizon, Abigail had booked private transportation for the entire Caldwell entourage: Nelson's parents, Lucy and Paul, his sister Janet, with her spouse Grant, his brother Stephen, with his wife Claire, and 2 sets of aunts and uncles. The convoy of beautiful black Mercedes vans waiting at the terminal should have wowed them. Instead, Lucy's first words as she walked off the plane were, "I thought I'd specified the hotel cars, Abigail. These seem rather generic." Abigail bit her tongue, as she had countless times before. The hotel had a scheduling issue. "These are genuinely from Lux Transport. They service most of the ambassadors in Rome." Her explanation failed. On deaf ears, Lucy was already talking something with Paul, their heads pressed close in that secretive way that always excluded Abigail. The Hotel de Russie welcomed them with the 5-star luxury she had scrupulously arranged. Champagne flowed in the VIP lounge while bellhops took away their bags. Abigail had spent months obtaining the perfect lodgings, selecting suites with the best views, arranging welcome baskets packed with Italian delicacies, and preparing unique itineraries for each family member. Lucy scarcely glanced at her itinerary. Before tossing it aside, "We'll just play it by ear," she said, waving. Several weeks of meticulous planning. The family knows Rome fairly well. Their room was superb. A patio overlooking the Spanish Steps, lovely flowers in every room, and a bottle of Nelson's favorite Burlo breathing on the sideboard. But the instant they entered, Nelson's phone rang. He came onto the terrace, speaking in hushed tones. "Work?" Abigail inquired when he returned. "Just some investment concerns," he said, not meeting her eyes. "Let's get ready for meal." The welcome dinner she had organized at a lovely trattoria in Testis became the first apparent indicator of her exclusion. Somehow the seating arrangement moved just as they arrived, and she found herself at the far end of the table, separated from Nelson by his cousin and aunt. During the lunch, inside jokes flowed across the table. Recollections about earlier family visits to Italy, from which she had been missing when she wanted to join the chat. Regarding the week's scheduled activities, Janet interrupted. "Oh, Abigail, we've actually chosen to do some family shopping tomorrow instead of the Vatican tour." "Family shopping?" Abigail asked. "You know, Lucy inserted smoothly, just some ritual we have." She smiled, but her tone was dismissive. "You'd be bored. Sweetie, why don't you use the time to check on the birthday arrangements? That's your expertise." After all, the pattern persisted during the next 2 days. She would wake up to find Nelson already gun a hurriedly scribbled message about visiting his father for breakfast. The family would disappear for hours on unplanned outings that strangely everyone knew about except her whispered discussions in nooks of the hotel lobby. Abruptly halted when she neared dinner reservations, miraculously modified to accommodate old acquaintances who happened to be in Rome, friends who gazed at her with scarcely disguised curiosity, as if analyzing how she was handling what was coming. On the third morning, opportunity offered itself when Nelson rushed to meet his brother left. His briefcase unlocked the documents inside, corroborated Abigail's biggest worries: draft separation papers produced by the Caldwell family. Attorney dated 2 months ago, a suggested settlement paying a pittance compared to what she was entitled to. And most damning, a screenplay, an actual script. It specified exactly how Nelson would announce their imminent divorce at his mother's birthday supper, presenting it as a mutual decision reached amicably. Abigail's hands trembled as she photographed each page with her phone there. It was in black and white. The immaculate, orchestrated exit of the unsuitable wife, timed for maximum public impact. Yet minimum social disgrace for the Caldwells. Lucy's birthday wasn't merely a celebration, it was to be Abigail's funeral as a Caldwell, instead of confronting Nelson. She redirected her rage into precise documentation. Each day she made excuses to return to their suite alone, hunting for additional proof. She finds bank statements revealing large withdrawals to offshore accounts, mail printouts discussing the liquidation of assets before the matter becomes public, and a handwritten note from Lucy to Nelson. "Once this unpleasantness with Abigail is behind us, Vicky will be welcomed back appropriately." Abigail's excellent mask stayed securely in place as she continued managing the birthday preparations. She confirmed floral arrangements, met with the restaurant management, approved the bespoke menu cards, all while collecting digital breadcrumbs of the Caldwell's financial house of cards. Every time anyone asked why she seemed distracted, she blamed last-minute event details. In truth, she was building her when the morning of Lucy's birthday dawned bright and clear. Abigail rose early, sliding out of bed without disturbing Nelson. The day's schedule was packed: a private morning visit of the Borgazza Gallery, lunch at a winery outside the city, then returning to the hotel to prepare for the evening's great meal. As the event coordinator, she required to be at the restaurant early to ensure everything was right. She was in the hotel's business center printing final confirmations when she caught Lucy's voice from the neighboring concierge counter. The dividing wall was thin, and her forceful tone carried clearly. "There will be 12 seats, not 13. Lucy instructed someone over the phone. A pause. "I don't care what the initial reservation says. The seating chart I supplied is final." "Yeah, that won't be a problem. The arrangement has been discussed. With my son, his wife will not be staying for the dinner. A family concern, you understand. No need for inquiries as she departs." Abigail's blood turned to ice. The missing seat wasn't a mistake or a last-minute adjustment. It was the crux of their plan, a public humiliation aimed to make her leave look like her choice rather than their orchestration. She closed her laptop, gathered her papers, and proceeded to the elevator with measured. Stepping inside, she grabbed out her phone and began making a new set of arrangements. If the Caldwells wanted a memorable birthday dinner, she would ensure it was remembered, but not in the way they had anticipated. She arrived at the restaurant an hour before the other guests, as any good event planner would. The rooftop setting offered a stunning panoramic view of the Colosseum, drenched in the golden warmth of sunset. She personally scrutinized every aspect, from the hand calligraphy place cards to the placement of Lucy's favorite white peonies and roses. The champagne was chilling, the 7-course sizzling taster menu revealed the 3-tiered birthday cake was a masterpiece of Italian artistry. Is everything to your satisfaction? Signora Caldwell inquired. Marco the maitre, beautiful, Abigail answered, knowing it would be the last extravaganza she would prepare for the Caldwells. Despite everything, her professional pride deserved nothing less than excellence. She returned to the hotel to change into the midnight blue Valentino gown she had chosen, specifically for evening. As she applied her makeup with firm hands, she inspected her reflection. In years of striving to fit into a world that was determined to reject her had taken its toll, but not in the way the Caldwells might have believed. Instead of weakening her, they had hardened her resolve. The Caldwell family had organized to meet in the hotel lobby before traveling together for the dinner. Abigail arrived just on time to find them all waiting. Lucy was resplendent in vintage Chanel, her diamond necklace sparkling. The Sunnelson's eyes widened slightly when he spotted her, perhaps recalling what had attracted him to her in the first place, or possibly calculating how soon he could be away of her. "Abigail, darling, you look lovely," Lucy whispered, air-kissing near her. "Cheeks, we're just waiting for the cars." The drive to the restaurant was short, filled with false banter discussing the day's activities from which Abigail had been excluded. As they rose in the elevator to the rooftop, Nelson placed his hand in the small of her back, a gesture that previously seemed intimate but now seemed staged for the benefit of the elevator attendant. The doors opened to display the lovely terrace she had constructed, converted into a magnificent eating room under the stars. The Colosseum shone, lighted against the night sky, a tribute to both grandeur and the inevitable demise of empires. How apt. Lucy entered first, received with thunderous cheers from waiting family members one by one. Everyone proceeded, approached. The enormous circular table, she had picked a table that should have sat 13. She trailed behind Nelson, who moved purposefully, reaching his designated seat close to his mother. She approached the space where her place card should have been, only to find nothing, no chair, no place setting, no recognition that she existed for a minute. She stood still, the perfect image of perplexity around her. Discussions proceeded as everyone settled into their chairs, studiously averting her sight. The waitstaff, who'd booked the seating with her just hours earlier, looked uneasy but stayed silent. "Is something wrong?" Lucy questioned innocently, her voice carrying just enough to catch everyone's attention. "There seems to be a mistake," she said, her voice calmer than she felt. "My place setting is missing." The perfectly prepared event occurred just as they had intended. Furrowed brows exchanged glances. Nelson half rising from his chair, a performance of concern that never reached his eyes. "That's odd," Janet observed, scrutinizing the table. "Did someone count wrong?" Paul cleared his throat. Maybe there was a miscommunication with the restaurant staff. Then came Nelson's statement, delivered with a deliberate casualness that made her skin crawl. He chuckled, genuinely chuckled. "Oops, suppose we miscounted the family." Laughed, not seriously, it would be too blatant, but with the mild delight of folks sharing an inside joke. In that time, she saw it all with crystal clarity. The intentional humiliation, the public venue designed to prevent a scene, the groundwork for the stories they would tell later about poor Abigail, who just couldn't bear the pressure of Caldwell family life. Her glance traveled slowly around the table, taking in each face, Lucy triumphant behind her birthday smile, Paul uneasy but complicit, Janet and Stephen enjoying the spectacle, their spouses conscious enough of the brutality to seem slightly ashamed, but not enough to object. And Nelson, her husband, the man who had once sworn to stand by her, against the world, watching her with dispassionate fascination, like a scientist studying an experiment. She could have produced a commotion. She could have demanded a chair, revealed their plot in front of the waitstaff, made the kind of public display that would live in family lore for decades. That's what they expected. That's what they had prepared, for Lucy would comfort Nelson over. His unstable marriage and the divorce narrative would right itself. Instead, she straightened her shoulders, elevated her head, and delivered the phrase that would begin her restoration of power. Seems I'm not family for words, simply devastating in their sincerity. The smiles wavered. Nelson's visage turned from smugness to uncertainty. She had deviated from their script. "I'll see myself out," she added, moving away with the elegance that had been her armor during her marriage. "Abigail, don't be dramatic." Nelson called after her another phrase from their playbook. "We can fix this." She didn't react. She strolled through the restaurant, nodding pleasantly to the workers who had witnessed her humiliation in the elevator. She finally gave herself a deep breath, then another. By the time she reached the street, her hands had stopped. Shaking a small cafe across from the restaurant afforded the perfect viewpoint. She ordered an espresso and brought out her phone. This was the time she had prepared for the 30 minutes of freedom, as the Caldwells praised themselves on their successful ejection of the unsuitable wife. First, she sent a prepared email to Marco, the restaurant manager, with instructions that had been agreed upon as a surprise contingency, a frequent practice in highly event planning. Attached was verification of her power as the account holder and event coordinator, accompanied with confirmation of prompt payment reversal. Next came the calls, the vineyard arranged for tomorrow's lunch, the private Vatican guide for the following day, the yacht skipper for the Amalfi Coast excursion, the villa in Tuscany. Any for the final weekend, one by one. She cancelled everything, transferring the deposits she had made using her own company's credit line back to her business account with each cancellation. She felt lighter. The emails from Nelson began arriving, initially annoyed, then bewildered, then increasingly desperate as her tactics became evident. She disregarded them all. 28 minutes after she had walked out of the restaurant, she finished her espresso and paid the bill. It was time for the final act. She straightened her Valentino gown and headed back across the street to see the moment when Lucy Caldwell's perfect birthday celebration fell around her. She approached a Roma restaurant by the service entrance, a method she had acquainted herself with during her earlier inspection. Marco, the restaurant manager, met her with a worried expression. "Senior Caldwell, are you confident about this? It is really uncommon." "I'm very convinced, Marco, and I appreciate your prudence." She handed him a sealed envelope. "This includes proof of the payment reversals and the revocation of my company's guarantee for tonight's expenses. As we discussed, the Caldwells will need to submit a new way of payment to continue their supper." Marco nodded solemnly. In the events world, relationships were all she had worked with Marco on 3 earlier occasions. For other Boston clients visiting Rome, he owed her favors, and while he might find her request unusual, professional courtesy demanded that he obey. "When should I inform them?" he inquired. "I'll text you in 5 minutes. I'd want to observe from somewhere discreet." He brought her to a little nook near the kitchen entrance. Had an excellent view of the Caldwell table. They were in the process of toasting Lucy champagne flutes, rising lofty features, shining with self-satisfaction. The first dish had just been served, the imported Ostra caviar that Lucy had expressly asked. It had been almost too easy to disassemble Lucy's birthday week. Most high-end vendors in the hospitality business operated in a network of mutual trust and referrals. As the event planner, who had made all the arrangements and whose firm credit line had protected the money, she had the authority to make changes. The digital trail of correspondence, contracts, and payment authorizations all bore her name and signature. Not Lucy's, not Nelson's. Her phone vibrated, a fresh message from Nelson. "Abigail, where are you? Quit being childish and come back." Then another. "Mother is unhappy. You're embarrassing yourself." She didn't answer. Instead, she texted Carmen at the Villa Borsa, where the family was set to stay for the Tuscany. Any portion of the journey, Carmen verified the cancellation and wished her well, adding that her hefty tip to the staff will be reimbursed separately to her business account. Her phone vibrated again, more texts from Nelson now pouring in rapid succession. "The hotel just called. They stated our reservation for Tomorrow night is cancelled. What are you doing, Abigail? This is insane. Contact me immediately. This is not funny. Repair this. Now she texted Marco, you may proceed from her hiding vantage point. She watched as Marco approached the table with two other staff members. He went down to speak discreetly to Paul, who was seated at the head of the table opposite Lucy. The family continued eating originally. Paying little attention to the interruption, Paul's visage altered first from polite interest to surprise, then fear. He pulled out his wallet, speaking more animatedly to Marco. The manager shook his head. Sorry, displaying Paul, something on a tablet. By now the entire table had noticed the disruption. Lucy placed down her fork, her regal posture exposing the first symptoms of stress. Nelson was staring at his phone, presumably receiving her last SMS. All deposits have been reimbursed to my corporate account. All arrangements for the week cancelled. Your family's financial difficulties are about to become very public. Enjoy your caviar. The scenario unfurled like a brilliantly orchestrated dance of pandemonium. Paul stood, his cheeks flushed with fury or shame. Perhaps both. Lucy's hand raced to her diamond necklace, grasping it as if for comfort. Janet was urgently whispering to her spouse. Stephen pulled out his phone, apparently trying to verify what was happening, and Nelson sat transfixed. His face drained of color, unlike the others here. Cognized the full ramifications. He knew what she had uncovered about their finances. He knew what would happen if his mother's society friends realized that the Caldwells could no longer afford a dinner bill, let alone maintain their rich lifestyle. Her phone rang, Nelson calling now, not texting. She declined the call and observed as he stood abruptly from the table, nearly knocking over his chair as he went away to try again. This time she responded, Abigail. He muttered, his voice a mixture of wrath and dread. What the hell do you think you're doing? Looks, I'm not family, she repeated calmly. So I'm not accountable for family celebrations. You need to repair this right now. Do you have any concept how terrible this is for my mother, for all of us? I have exactly the notion, Nelson. That was the point. Where are you? His voice altered, desperation growing in. We need to discuss. I can explain about Vicky, about everything. I'm sure you can. The problem is I've seen the financial statements. Nelson, I've seen the emails. No, the Caldwell business is failing, and I know. You've been hiding assets abroad before filing for divorce. His sudden intake of breath verified what she already knew. He never expected her to find these things. He had underestimated her, just as his family had from the beginning. Those were private. Yes, they were exactly like the text communications from Vicky concerning the baby, much like the script for announcing our divorce at your mother's birthday dinner, just like the seating arrangement, purposely excluding me, stillness on the queue at the restaurant. She could see the manager now addressing to the entire table. Several other guests were watching with undisguised enthusiasm. The Caldwell's humiliation was becoming a public spectacle, just what they had planned for her. Nelson's voice had lost all its aristocracy. Confidence, Abigail. Please, you don't realize what this will do to us. I understand completely, she said. That's why I did it. We can sort this out. Come back to the hotel. I'll meet you there in 20 minutes. No, Nelson, I don't believe. We can figure this out. She closed the conversation and went out from her hiding place. It was time for her final appearance as a Caldwell as she approached the table. 12 pairs of eyes looked to her, some angry, some terrified, all incredulous. Lucy spoke, first her voice quivering with wrath. How dare you destroy my birthday? Abigail smiled, feeling a strange sense of calm. I learned from the best, Lucy. After all, isn't this precisely what you planned for me? A public humiliation, a choreographed exit. The only difference is I changed the finish. Paul stood, his face hot with anger. This is outrageous. You had no right. I had every right. She disrupted every contract, every reservation, every arrangement was in my name or my company's name. I merely altered the arrangements. You'll regret this. Janet spat. When Nelson divorces you, you'll receive nothing. That's where you're incorrect. Abigail said, gazing directly at Nelson. I have copies of everything. The offshore accounts, the concealed assets, the dishonest business dealings, I'm confident. The IRS would find it all intriguing. Reading their faces grew ghostly white as the consequences sunk in that moment. She felt no triumph, no vindication, only a great sense of release as she turned and went away, leaving the Caldwell family. For the last time, she departed Italy the next morning, upgrading herself to first class on a direct ticket to Boston, using points she had acquired, arranging the Caldwell's past vacations. The irony wasn't missed on her behind. She left a family in disarray, their carefully constructed facade disintegrating in real time through the hotel concierge. She learns that the Caldwells had paid for their supper using Lucy's vintage Bivalgari jewelry as collateral until a wire transfer could be accomplished by dawn. Word had spread across Rome's high-end hospitality network that the prominent American family was having payment troubles. The remaining vendors she hadn't personally carnaled began asking upfront payments rather than promises. Her phone was swamped with texts, some threatening, others appealing. She viewed them on her layover in London, enjoying Earl Grey tea in the British Airways lounge. Paul, this is actionable. Our lawyers will be in touch. Janet, you've made the biggest mistake of your life. Stephen, did you truly believe you might disgrace our family without penalties? Lucy's statement was the most revealing. I always knew you were common. This nasty behavior merely proves what I've maintained from the beginning, but it was the string of communications from Nelson article told the genuine story of a family in free fall. First, you have no idea what you've done. My father had a mild cardiac episode. Is that what you wanted then? The Prescotts and Whitmore watched everything. Do you know what this implications for our standing later? The hotel is asking cash for the entire week up ahead. They say all guarantees have been cancelled, and finally, please, Abigail, in need to talk to you. It's about more than us now. She didn't answer to any of them. Instead, she forwarded the financial materials she had obtained to her lawyer with orders to retain them securely until needed if the Caldwells pursued, thinking she would be prepared when she returned home. To their Beacon Hill brownstone, she hired a moving firm to pack her own possessions. She took only what was definitely hers, clothes, jewelry she had purchased. Herself, her collection of first-edition books, and the artwork she had purchased before their marriage, everything else, including the wedding gifts and stuff purchased jointly. She left behind. She wanted nothing that may bind her to the Caldwells. Web of deceit. 2 days later, the Boston Globe published a brief item in their social section dubbed Investment Group. Faces Inquiry. The item referenced financial abnormalities and queries from investors. While it didn't make front-page news, it was enough to send ripples through Boston's social circles. Nelson appeared at her new apartment, unannounced 1 week after she returned from Rome. He looked haggard, the shiny mask of affluence replaced by true need. You need to come home, he said when she opened the door. This has gone far enough. This isn't a negotiation tactic, Nelson. This is divorce. He went inside without invitation, raking his hands through his untidy hair. The SEC is looking into my father's accounts. Too bored. Members have quit. Mother had to cancel her charity gala since 3 significant contributors pulled out. It sounds like a Caldwell family problem, don't she remarked. Not mine, it's your problem if I go down with the ship, he retorted. We're still married, my debts are your debts. She permitted herself a little smile. Not when I have proof that you purposefully excluded me from financial decisions and hid assets with the purpose to cheat me in divorce processes. My lawyer assures me that's enough to protect me. His veneer cracked totally. Then Nelson slumped onto the sofa, head in his hands. I never intended it to be like this. What did you want? Nelson, she asked. To marry me for my event planning skills, to utilize me, to manage your social calendar while you reconnected with Vicky, to dismiss me when I was no longer useful. It wasn't like that. In the beginning, he replied quietly, I did love you, but not enough to stand up to your family, not enough to be honest about your affair. She sat across from him, feeling strangely relaxed when the infant, to his head snapped up. How did you for months, according to the texts? I saw her hesitated congratulations. A dark hush fell between them. Outside, rain began to tap against the windows of her new apartment, smaller than their brownstone. But hers alone, paid for with the revenues from a business she had developed without Caldwell money or connections. I'll give you whatever you want. Nelson finally responded, just hand over the documents and sign an NDA, name your price. That was the moment she discovered the Caldwells still didn't understand her at all. After 5 years, they still saw her as someone who could be bought, someone motivated by the same material concerns that drove their existence. I don't want your money, Nelson. I want my freedom. I want the truth acknowledged. She stood up, indicating. Their chat was ended. The paperwork. Stay with my lawyer. Unless you try to drag me down with you. The divorce terms are straightforward. I walk away with what's mine, you with what's yours, and Vicky the baby. His voice was barely audible. That's between you and your conscience. I hope you'll be a better husband to her than you were to me after he left. She remained by the window, watching the rain intensify. The controversy unfolded gradually. Over the following weeks, the Boston Globe produced a more detailed report on the Caldwell Investment Group's financial issues. Long-term clients silently withdrew their portfolios. Lucy's seat on 3 famous charity boards became emeritus. Rather than active, Vicky's pregnancy became publicly known when she was photographed at her obstetrician's office wearing an engagement ring. The timeline made it evident that their relationship had begun long before the marriage ended. In Boston's elite society, infidelity might be allowed if covert, yet such brazen wrongdoing violated the tacit code. Her business survived, despite, or possibly because of the incident. Clients who had earlier looked down on her now admired her discretion and integrity. The narrative that circulated wasn't about a lady scorned, but about a professional who refused to be used and dumped. 6 months later, she received an invitation that made her laugh out loud when she read it, a request to bid on planning Lucy Caldwell's next charity event. Obviously, desperation had overtaken pride. She rejected graciously, citing a full schedule. The divorce was finalized without fuss. The Caldwells focused on repairing their reputation, and finances agreed to her requests without debate. Nelson and Vicky married discreetly. Their daughter was born 2 weeks later. She sent no present on the 1-year anniversary of that night in Rome. She found herself planning another event in Italy, a celebrity wedding on the Amalfi Coast. As she stood on a terrace overlooking the Mediterranean, phone in hand, and vendors at her command, she realized something unexpected. She was glad not, despite the collapse of her marriage, but because of it. The Caldwells had sought to make her feel tiny, to reduce her to an accessory. With their huge tale instead, they had unwittingly released her to recover her own story in losing what she thought she sought. She had found what she genuinely needed, not approval from a family determined to reject her, but the bravery to reject a life founded on appearances. She raised her glass to the setting sun, toasting the lost chair that had revealed her exactly where she belonged. If you liked my video, please like and subscribe to the channel.